Hello, my name is Caleb Smith, and I'm coming to you from the Rocket Miner with an update for November 4th, 2020. We've crammed a lot of living into the last 24 hours, I think most of us. Personally, I spent a lot more time at the polls on the 3rd than I'd anticipated. I was fortunate. I was the first person standing outside the door at the Rock Springs Civic Center. I wasn't the first one there. I was just the first one to get out of the vehicle and just hang out by the door. They even got to watch the poll workers put up the directional signs and people get out of their heated, well-insulated cabs to join me out there. And while I was able to get in and out pretty quickly, there were widespread voting delays throughout Sweetwater County's electoral stations yesterday. Anecdotally, I would say that after no later than 7:30, 8 o'clock, it seemed like in many places the minimum waiting time was 2.5 to 3 hours. I know some people personally who waited in line at least 4 hours. Having started the day in line, I was there toward the end. I hung out at both the events complex and the Western Wyoming Community College up through the point where the end of the line finally got to the point where they were able to get inside the facility, the building itself, where they're able to close the doors behind. And even then, there was still quite a bit of time for people to vote. Between when they got through at the events complex for the same, I still had time to be able to both swing by the college, watch them close their doors, and then get to the Sweetwater County courthouse where the results were being tabulated as quickly as possible. I would say from my perspective, the people on the ground did a spectacular job. We had fewer polling places than we normally did in the past. We had fewer volunteers employed to help out at the polls. There were technical difficulties. There was certainly an increase in participation. While across the state we saw lots of records set for absentee ballots, we had a lot of people turn out the polls, and we had a number of people who also registered at the polls, which good job for you. It's also why sometimes some of the delays were a little bit lengthier in some places. In the future, if you know somebody who's preparing to vote, I would strongly encourage them to register early. And like I said, I spent a couple hours with the people in line, and it's different when you're there as an observer. It's one of those things, looking glass things, where participating, being right there in the mix, is a little bit different when you kind of, I would call it like stepping into the picture, as opposed to just watching the action. And it was interesting because there were a lot of strong feelings in that crowd. There was a lot of dark humor. There were some very vulgar, obscene comments. One of our competitors bet me $5 to share those comments unedited, and I'm not going to do that. My mom and my grandmother watches the stuff I do, so I am always careful of how I present myself, how I carry myself in public, as much as anybody can be. But there was a lot of passion. There was a lot of feelings in that. There was a lot of frustration. But I also saw a lot of encouragement. Toward the end of the night, there were both from the volunteers there, or even some of the people in line. It was you could do this. You've spent all this time. You're closer than you've ever been. Stick with it. Stay with it. Stay with it. There were some tongue-in-cheek brimming. There were some very, very stupid jokes or suggestions like that. Let's pretend that you're about to give birth, so you need to go ahead and rush through the line. We need to hurry up. We hurry it up. Ridiculous, cartoonish, sitcom premise stuff. That is the type of thing that you sometimes turn to. It was quite interesting seeing the dynamic of people, a lot of people who never met each other before. But you know, if you spend 3 hours next to somebody and you're sharing, engaging, you'll learn a bit more about people. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple relationships started yesterday that may have some legs on them. And it's one of those things where there was frustration and determination because while some of the situation was rough, people wanted to make sure their voice was heard. There's a lot of people say, like, why vote in Wyoming? It's a state that's predominantly votes Republican. You pretty much know that usually Republican candidates win. What does it determine? It determines a lot, in my opinion. It's at the lower levels. It determines the people are going to represent you at the city council, commission, state legislature. There are some ballot. There is the amendment to the state constitution on the ballot. And while maybe not this election, we know that honestly some of these provisions, like we have, like the 6 cent. The 6 cent ends up on the ballot when the elected leaders push for it. So while we didn't say yay or nay on this go around, we're selecting the people who have the chance that might determine when the next one comes, or decide that to postpone it because of the current economic environment. Redistricting is also another thing that's coming up that will. The people in charge are the ones who help dictate the lines, and in a lot of places, they have an influence upon what districts are drawn. There was, like I said, there was a lot of passion last night that I saw in the people in lines, because and there's some people it didn't matter the weather, it didn't matter how long they had to wait. They were in line before the polls were declared closed, as in nobody people could join the line. But the state laws are that if you're in line and you remain in line, I mean, they let you stay on the premises like if you had to go to a bathroom break. They're not barbarians, but if you're willing to wait through, you could still get your ballot and you could get it counted. It was also cool to see people support. In addition to emotional support, there was people sharing food. I heard at least one report of someone passing out brewskis. Question the legality of that, but not the excitement behind it or the friendship. Certainly more. I saw people delivering food, dropping off chairs. There were some people who they looked more comfy and comfortable than what I could personally get in my own living room. And while Sweetwater County was a bit delayed in getting its results, we have them out there. You can find the unofficial results posted on rocketminer.com or on the county clerk's site if you prefer to go there. And the other thing right now that we're dealing with is the fact that we don't have a definitive president. Not yet. Hoping we have one soon. Certainly taking longer than what we'd represent. Yesterday I was talking about how it's a natural narrative they want to set up to have a big climax to election night and then a big boom, definitive answer, call it good. Sometimes life doesn't turn out that way. We're still waiting for them to count the votes. And it's one of those things where my night didn't stop when they finally got the last voter through. I headed on to the courthouse where lots of hardworking, dedicated, sleep-deprived, because some of them got up even earlier than I did to start their day to get things going, working on tabulating the results. Some cases, there were those who were taking results over the phone. Those were later confirmed by the results that came in on the thumb drives, which had to be physically transported, collated, put into the system, distributed as quickly as possible. And it was also it was interesting watching as the results came in, because sometimes with different precincts, sometimes the numbers would fluctuate a little, sometimes they'd fluctuate a lot. There were some races that, had they been called early, we would have, we would have a different city council or some Senate seats than what the true reality turned out to be. As frustrated and exhausted as some people were in line, they were hanging on because they had the promise, they had the expectation that their votes would be counted. They were willing. They were going to do extra, more than what they had anticipated, because it would be worth it. And I don't know what the reaction would have been. It's considering how impassionate the crowd already was. I don't know how everyone would have responded. They would have been told, "You follow by the rules. You did everything you're supposed to do. Your vote don't count." It's too late. It's taking too long. Just go ahead. Just wrap it up. Just call with what we have in hand. One of the expectations that we have as American citizens is that when it comes to election day, my vote counts as much as yours. If I'm an eligible voter and I fill out the ballot properly and I submit it in the way that's dictated by law, my ballot weighs just as much as yours. We don't give preference to one another just because they may have a bit more money. They may come from a more powerful, prominent family. Their first name starts as alphabetical order earlier than mine, and we don't give preference to ballots just because one was counted differently. What I find ironic is that a lot of the ballots we're counting now, they were filed earlier. It's not that someone waited to the last minute to get theirs in. A lot of these cases, these were ballots that were dropped off, postmarked before the election, and they're just only now being counted. And it's in Sweetwater County, the goal, and I'm hopeful that we achieved it for all the voters, all the volunteers, all the government workers, was that every vote that was legitimate, that was fairly and in good faith filled out and submitted, counted. And I don't see why anyone else in America who fits those exact same criteria should not be given the same benefit. Wyoming often aspires to follow the cowboy code, and while we believe that we've got a particularly unique and efficient outlook, we also recognize that fair is fair. And I just want, in the same way that in Sweetwater County, the hardworking, honest people made sure that every vote counted. I'm hopeful that we're able to see that throughout the country. And yeah, it's going to take more time. There are states like Nevada that says they're not going to even announce their results until tomorrow morning at 9. That's frustrating, but that's fair. And that helps us ensure an accurate American system. And I'm willing to just put up a little bit more if that's what we can offer to other people. It was at certain points it was a surreal, almost cartoonish scene, at the election yesterday, and the knowledge that things could have been done differently, but sometimes you just make the most of the situation you find yourself in. Personally, the idea of voters still actively engaged with one another. I'm still excited to. Maybe a little bit tired, but still excited about being able to cast their vote, lined up over moonlight. To me, that was a really cool scene. And I got to see that in multiple places in Sweetwater County yesterday throughout Rock Springs. And to a slightly different, but no less less important bit in the people working at the courthouse. Those committed to delivering the news and sharing it. It's sharing the results with others. That's always a cool thing to see. So, yeah, it's going to require a little bit more patience, a little bit more fortitude. It's fortitude to deal with all this craziness. But like I said, I'd encourage you, but whether it's individuals or groups or whatnot, to just stay the course when it comes to just making sure that every honest American's votes counts. If you spent the time in line, if you made sure that your ballot was filled out correctly, or if it's one of those provisional ballots where there's all those other things that sometimes I was first in line and the person second in line noticed that his name was misspelled in the poll book. And he said that he'd contacted the clerk's office beforehand to make sure he was registered, make sure everything was clear. And even something simple like that costs a little bit of time and can lead to some delays. No matter what the reason was, I just encourage everyone to continue to be good neighbors, considerate. As a side note, I'm very happy that the I heard predictions from both the right and the left that the other side's going to get all violent and get all angry and make a mess of things. We didn't really see that last night. I'm hopeful that absence of chaos continues. We've had so much in this year already. Let's just say that we've more than reached our quota and just call it good for the rest of the year. But like I said, be kind and considerate to one another. Be safe out there. Have a good day. This is Caleb Smith with the Rocket Miner saying bye.